We always talk about trust is this soft skill, right? Something kind of fuzzy, hard to nail down. But what if we've been looking at it all wrong? What if trust isn't soft at all? What if it's actually a system, something you can measure, something you can build, and something that is the absolute engine for high performance? Let's get into it.
All right, here's what we're going to cover. First, we'll look at the real cost when trust is low. Then, we'll dive into the 4 pillars that are the foundation for building it back up. We'll talk about how to make this stuff a daily habit, not just a nice idea. And of course, we'll check out the huge performance payoff and finish up with a step-by-step blueprint so you can start building this yourself.
Okay, so first things first, let's talk about the damage. Low trust, it's not just some kind of bad vibe in the office. No, it's a very real tax. It's a hidden cost that's constantly draining your team's energy, their productivity, and yeah, your bottom line.
So I want you to think about your own workplace for a second. Seriously, what is the actual cost of low trust where you are? Because when you look at the data, it is absolutely staggering.
Let's start with the big one, productivity. The research is clear on this. People in high-trust companies are a full 50% more productive. I mean, think about that, a 50% boost. That is a massive difference. But it's not just about getting more stuff done.
It's also about people's well-being. A high-trust workplace, we're talking 74% less stress. 74%! That creates what's called psychological safety, where people feel safe to just be themselves. And that feeling of safety, well, it unlocks something even more powerful.
And here it is. This is the real game changer. People in high-trust companies report having 106% more energy at work. That's not a typo. It means they have more than double the energy. Just imagine for a second what your team could do with twice the energy. That is the power of trust.
So, if low trust is the problem, what's the fix? Well, it's not about just, trying harder to be trustworthy. It's about building an actual system. And that system stands on a solid foundation held up by 4 key pillars.
So the whole system, it rests on these 4 ideas: expertise, empathy, creativity, and generosity. They all work together, they reinforce each other, creating this really strong framework for trust. Let's break down what each one actually means.
First up, you've got expertise. This is the bedrock, really. It's simple. Are you good at what you do? Trust has to start here. People need to know you have the skills, the knowledge, the track record to actually deliver. It's the proof in the pudding, right? It shows you're capable.
Okay, next is empathy. This is all about connecting with people on a human level. It's about really trying to understand where they're coming from. When you can do that, you create that psychological safety we talked about, that space where people feel comfortable enough to share wild ideas, to take a few risks, to just be themselves without fear.
Then we have pillar number 3, creativity. Now this one is tied really closely to empathy. See, when you encourage creative, flexible thinking, you're not just getting better solutions to problems, you're actually building a culture where people get curious about different perspectives and experiences. And that curiosity, it builds much deeper connections. And our final pillar is generosity. Now, this is not about, buying donuts for the office. It's about being generous with your knowledge, with your time, with recognition. It's about freely sharing credit and helping others shine. It's showing people that you genuinely have their back and you care about their success, not just your own. All right, so we've got our 4 pillars. Awesome. But let's be real. Principles on a slide are pretty useless if you don't put them into practice. So the big question is, how do we turn these big ideas into small, daily, repeatable habits?
Yeah, this is where the rubber meets the road. How do you actually live these pillars? Expertise, empathy, creativity, generosity, every single day at work. Well, you do it by focusing on 5 key behaviors. Think of these as the actions that bring the pillars to life. Your expertise, that shows up as competence and reliability. Your empathy and generosity, that's benevolence, basically showing you care about others' well-being. And then, wrapping around all of it, you have integrity and transparency. These are the things people can actually see and feel every day.
And you can bundle all this into a really simple 4-step daily routine. Step 1, a quick morning alignment. Just take a minute to set your intentions for the day based on those pillars. 2, ongoing communication. This just means really practicing active listening and giving feedback regularly. 3, consistency maintenance. So simple, but so powerful. You track your commitments and you follow through every time. And 4, relationship investment. This is about actively trying to understand what others need, and, this is key, being willing to be a little vulnerable yourself. Okay, so now for the best part, the payoff.
Because when you practice these behaviors consistently, the results aren't just warm, fuzzy feelings. Nope. They are hard, cold numbers that you can see on your performance dashboard.
I mean, just look at this. Companies with high-trust cultures see a 76% jump in engagement. That's huge. But this next one is just wild. They see a 260% increase in motivation. 260%. This system is what fuels that discretionary effort, that extra bit of energy and passion that separates a good team from a truly legendary one.
And here's how you can actually track this stuff. On the left side, you've got your trust indicators, things you can measure, like employee engagement scores or how many people are sticking around. And on the right, you've got the performance results they directly impact, things like how fast your team solves problems or how loyal your customers are. You can draw a straight line from the trust you build to the performance you get. All right, so hopefully you're sold on the why and the what. Let's wrap this up with the how. Here's a clear, actionable blueprint you can use to start building this kind of culture in your own organization. Look, this isn't a quick fix, it's a journey. But you can break it down. Phase 1, the first couple of months, is all about building the foundation. Figure out where your trust levels are now and get your leaders on board. Then, for Phase 2, you spend a few months integrating those daily routines we talked about and setting up feedback loops. And finally, in Phase 3, you work on expanding the system until it's not just something you do, it's just part of who you are as a company. It's in your DNA.
Now, for any of this to actually work, 4 things are totally non-negotiable. 1. Leadership has to be all in. 2. You have to be systematic about it. You can't just hope it happens. 3. You've got to be willing to learn and adjust as you go. And 4, it has to become fully baked into your culture, from top to bottom.
So the big takeaway here is that trust isn't some magical, mysterious feeling that just appears or disappears. It's a system of pillars, of behaviors, of routines. It's something you can intentionally design, build, and maintain. So the only real question left is, are you ready to build yours?